All right. You know, I'm a history professor, and while you're stuck with me for 3 months, there might be a little history thrown in every so often, all right? In the 8th century BC, those innovative people, the Greeks, invented a new military formation, a new tactic called the hoplite phalanx. A hoplite is just the Greek word for foot soldier, and the phalanx was the military formation. In fact, we have evidence of this we know what it looks like from artwork from the time. Here's a chippy vase from the mid-7th century showing the soldiers marching in hoplite formation. Let me give you a little bit more, a better view on what it would look like. Yes, these are little, clay figurines or something. But these foot soldiers would line up with these huge shields. You can actually buy these on eBay, and they're like $400, $500. You get the bronze kind that are huge, okay? I've got to get one for my college classes as a demonstration, but they're expensive. The unit would, maybe be about 20 wide, it depended, and like 8 rows deep, typically. And the shields would be up overlapping, creating a virtual impenetrable wall. Some have called it a human tank. Here's another picture of what it might look like. And you can see that the shields are even turned on the sides to guard against thrusts as well. So the phalanx allowed Greek armies to have great success, even against larger armies, like the Persians who attacked Greece in the 5th century. Greece wasn't heavily populated. If you've ever been there, I haven't, but it doesn't have good farmland, and so there weren't large populations in Greece. So for them to take on a larger army, they had to be smarter, more clever. And there was a very large force to their east. See all that green? That is the Persian Empire. You see Greece over on the left? Kind of small in comparison. And Greece wasn't even unified. Greece was full of city-states. Athens ruled itself. Sparta ruled itself. They didn't have a lot of soldiers compared to the Persians. And we had great King Darius I ruling over the mighty Persian Empire. And at a certain point in time, there was a rebellion on the Ionian coast, which you might see there across the Aegean Sea from Greece. These were Greeks that rebelled, and Athens supported them. That really ticked off the Persian king. He sent a force across to try to attack Athens and teach them a lesson. And you know what? The Athenians used the hoplite phalanx to send the Persians back home. That was the Battle of Marathon. That's where we get the 26-mile race from the runner. Well, 10 years later, and the Greeks were getting ready for this. They thought it would happen. Persia decided to bring a huge army and navy against Greece to invade and conquer Greece once and for all. So we had a new king in Persia, Xerxes, who had his army cross over into Europe. How do you do that from Asia Minor, Turkey, modern-day Turkey? You go across the smallest water point, the Hellespont, 3/4 of a mile across. How are you going to get land forces across? Why not just put a bunch of boats in it and then tie them together and walk across? That's what he did. Ingenious. So he came and around Thrace, that coast up in the north and down, aiming to take over all of Greece. And the Greek city-states got together and said, we've got to help each other here. We're all dead. The first battle was the Battle of Thermopylae. And this is where the Spartans were involved. This is the city of Thermopylae. And the orange route there, or sort of gold route, is that road that the Persians followed in trying to attack all of Greece. And they were met by the Spartans on a mountain pass, the Pass of Thermopylae, which was only 15 meters wide. You had the sea on one side, a cliff with the sea on one side, and then mountains going up on the other side. The only way to get through was a 15-meter wide pass. There's actually a gate they had built there. This is a depiction of that battle. Persians had probably around 300,000 troops. Herodotus said they had 2.6 million, but the historians today can't buy that, okay? Who knows? There were a lot of Persians. The Greeks who met them totaled in 6,000. They were led by 300 Spartan hoplites. 300, does that ring a bell to any of you? Spartans were the most feared army in Greece. Spartans trained all day. They didn't farm, they weren't craftsmen. They had farms, but they had slaves to work the farms from people they'd conquered, the Helans. Spartans didn't even live at home with their wives. They lived in halls, their units, and all they did was train. Everyone feared them in Greece, at least respected them, I should say. They eventually went to war with Athens, but that's not this story. This is what King Xerxes met when his troops came to Thermopylae. The Spartans were led by King Leonidas and were blocking their route. Xerxes waited 4 days, and then he offered the Spartans and their allies a last chance to surrender. King Leonidas responded with this phrase, "Molon labe." Anyone speak Greek in here? Sako? You know what it means?
Come and take them?
Come and take them. Oh, you want us to surrender? Come and take them. We'll see. And so Xerxes finally decided to attack. And I want to see a little clip of that, if you don't mind. Horse, would you hit the lights?
Earthquake. No, Captain. Battle conditions.
Persians.
This is where we hold them. This is where we fight. This is where they die. And these shields boys. Remember this day, man. It will be yours for all time. Spartans! Lay down your weapons! Persians! Come and get them! Give them everything. Do the best you can do.
I bet you never thought you'd be seeing this on a Sunday morning. I apologize for the gore. It is not real, folks. Okay, I get it. Thanks. Do you have any idea what the sermon title is today? Guesses? That's a very good guess. Come and take them. Yeah. No, but it's not the sermon title. But that is a great guess. What's the topic? What do you think the topic's on today? Right. Another excellent guess. Very reasonable. Yeah. No, it's not the On the Armor of God. Any other? No one wants to try.
Sticking together.
You're a very smart man. What score did you get again on the? I heard you talking earlier. The sermon topic is called self-sacrificial love. So let me just explain the hoplite phalanx, the way that it worked. So if I'm a hoplite, right? So I've got my shield, a huge shield in my left hand, my left arm. I've got my spear here in my right. And I'm lined up, right? But think of me alone for a moment, if I'm alone as a soldier, okay? Where am I most vulnerable to attack? Which side? My right side, right? I'm uncovered. Now, who covers my right side? The guy next to me, his shield, right? So I'm depending on him. My life depends on my fellow soldier next to me, right? The phalanx only works if everybody does their part, right? The good of the whole, the health of the whole is based upon everyone doing their part. It lives and dies as a unit, right? And they're small. Is the church today the majority of the world? We're small, aren't we? We go out into a world that, if we were to make an analogy, no offense, would be full of Persians, right? But it's full of the forces of darkness. I'm totally not saying anything against Persians. I think Persian women are beautiful, by the way. And Persian men scare me a little bit, but that's only because they have nukes. So we go out into a world where we are the minority. Is this a big church? Small church. Very small church, right? Every soldier, that includes women in this church, Everyone counts. We want spiritual gifts in this church, right? We want the Holy Spirit to manifest in this church. We desperately want that. But will they come if we aren't loving? What is our priority when we seek God? 1 Corinthians 14:1 says to pursue love and earnestly desire the spiritual gifts. Pursue love and earnestly desire the spiritual gifts. I got to credit Hyde, who's not here on Memorial Day weekend. I knew he was going to be gone for this, pointing this out to me. Pursue here connotates a constant, relentless effort, a pursuit, or chase. In the wording of the verse, it seems to have primacy over the spiritual gifts. Pursue love and earnestly desire the spiritual gifts. In fact, we know it has primacy over the spiritual gifts from the previous chapter in Corinthians, where Paul says, if I speak with the tongues of men and angels, but do not have love, I have become a noisy gong or a clanging cymbal. If I have the gift of prophecy and know all mysteries and all knowledge, and if I have all faith so as to remove mountains, but do not have love, I am nothing. Love is primary. That's what we need to seek primarily when we seek more of God. Are you a loving person? Of course. I'm not only loving, people love me. Because I'm so doggone loving. And they love me a lot. They just love me. Is that what we say? Are you a loving person? Well, if we're going to be real honest about this, really take an inventory and answer this carefully, we'd have to know what the word loving means. And for that, we'd have to know what the word love means, right? So there's 4 different Greek words translated as love in the New Testament. This is old hat for a lot of you here, but I'll run through it. Eros is used for romantic sexual love. Storge refers to love within a family, mother, child, father, child. Philia is friendship love. We call Philadelphia the city of brotherly love, but that in the sense of brotherly is more friend to friend. And agape, we're all familiar with agape, unconditional. I actually think selfless love is a better title because there are some conditions on God's love for us. I guess it depends if you're a Calvinist or Arminian on that, maybe. So we'll leave it at that, whatever you choose. Now, I want you to notice that the first 3, with the first 3, you get something out of it if you express that type of love. If you practice eros, you get some back, don't you? If you practice family love, it's enjoyable. It's sort of really natural to love your children, to love your parents. They care for you, you care for them. You get something out of it. With friendship, wouldn't it be awful if you didn't have any friends in this world? So you exhibit friendship love because you enjoy friends. It makes things enjoyable. But agape love is selfless love. It is self-sacrificial. You don't necessarily get something back out of it. You can have a selfish motivation for all the other 3. And you could take an inventory of yourself and say, I am so loving. I am like Mr. Storge. I am Miss Philia. I'm not going to go with Eros. But do you really show agape love on a regular basis? It involves sacrifice. And in fact, you don't truly know if you have agape love until you see yourself sacrificing for others. So let's ask this question again. Are you a loving person? We've got an overarching Bible passage we always bring up when we talk about love, right? Love is patient. Love is kind. There's a whole long list, right? I highlighted or underlined it is not self-seeking, because I think that's the essence of love, wanting the best, or of agape love, wanting the best for the other person, even when it's at your own expense. And yes, the Greek word used in this passage over and over is agape. Now look, don't you just enjoy being around people who exhibit this kind of love to you? Aren't those the best people to be around? People who really exhibit agape love, who sacrifice for you. They're always thinking about your needs. What's going on with you? How can I help? Hey, look, it's church. Let's talk a little bit about how churches stagnate and die. Well, they can stagnate and die when they have bad theology. They give up the gospel, right? Bad preacher, so forth. Churches also and I'd say more commonly, stagnate and die when the congregation has some problems. And so I've been to a lot of different churches over these years. I'm an old man by now, you all know. So I grew up in Hollywood Presbyterian Church. I went to Lake Avenue Church in my college years, or at least for one college year, and the first college year. Then I thought it was too big, went to First Baptist Church of La Crescenta, went to a couple different churches up in Santa Barbara when I was doing my PhD, been to a couple different Armenian churches, been to Reality Church. I was going there before I came back to be involved with leadership here. And in my experience, the main reason a church fails is because it fails to practice self-sacrificial love. And it doesn't even know it. Let me give you what I think are the 5 main ways that a church typically fails to practice self-sacrificial love. One is that they won't reach out to non-believers. They don't care. Now, we talked about this last time, so I'm going to mark that off. Let's look at the other 4. What about reaching out to believers within the church? What about infighting, resentment, and holding grudges? Or refusing to serve the church with time and energy, labor? Or refusing to part with one's money to give to the church? So look, I've grouped these. I want to talk about these 2 today. And I'm going to talk about these 2 in a future sermon. So today's sermon is on specifically 2 and 3 listed up here. Let's talk about reaching out within the church. So there are 2 categories of people that don't get connected to others at churches. This is a problem throughout churches. New people, right? New people. Now here's what's interesting about new people. Sometimes they're still new after they've been going there for several months because no one has ever reached out to them. And the regular folks get confused. The regular folks get confused because they're so used to seeing them every Sunday or at a meeting on, whether it's Thursday or Friday, that they don't realize that these folks aren't plugged in. Then there's people that used to attend and show up again. No one talks to them in any meaningful way after church. No one invites them out to lunch, and they go home. Let me tell you, the first 10 minutes after church on Sunday, after the service ends, are the most important ones of the week for ministry. After my dad left my mom back in the 90s, it was hard for her because she was suddenly single. She'd been married for, 34 years or something. So she started going to La Crescenta First Baptist Church every Sunday by herself. She'd listen to the sermon, They greet, oh, welcome to our church, and the midway point, listen to the sermon, and she'd go home. No one would say anything to her, week after week after week. She finally said, why am I going to this church? She prayed, God, please give me a friend. And the Sunday after she prayed that, she met this woman about her same age who was single in the parking lot. But what a shame, and they've been good friends ever since, but what a shame that it took that long. My mom's friend Cheryl, she's about 40 years old. She and her husband have some kids. They went out to a church in the San Gabriel Valley for 10 months. And they just felt like people were cold. They finally gave it up. They gave it a good shot, 10 months. Then they decided to go out to a church in Porter Ranch. And the first Sunday, they knew they were home. People made an effort to welcome them. My own experience, it's interesting, I think. You know what? I'm going to save this story for another part. I just realized it works better another time. So we have, I can't believe it. I didn't put up all of these. Let's unpack this. Brand new people we talked about, people not yet plugged in. These are people we need to think about. To hurting people. Sometimes someone stops coming to church because something happened to them. Nobody calls them. I've had people tell me that before. Do you think one person called me to check up on me? No. Or to those simply outside your circle of friends at church. We have selfish excuses for this. Might be, I enjoy talking to my friends after church. Church is done, I go look for my friends. Because we're friends. That's what friends do, we talk. I doubt she and I have anything in common. He's up to him. I'm important at this church, and I have a lot of the established popular people to talk to. I have kids, so I don't have the ability to talk to anyone I don't already know. I'm not quite sure how the math would work on that, but that can happen. Or I don't have kids, but I'd rather play with someone else's kids after service than to talk to someone I don't know well. Talking to someone someone new that I don't know takes too much energy, and I'm tired. I've had a hard week. These are the excuses that are typical at churches. I say hello and welcome to new people, and that should be sufficient. What does the Bible teach us? What's Jesus' example to us? Jesus reached out to the hurting and the outcasts in society. He would get trouble from those in power for hanging out with them. How much easier is it for us to simply reach out to new people? They're not even outcasts, they're just new. They haven't been plugged in. They're great people, but they've been overlooked. There's a great verse, Philippians 2:4. Let each of you look not only to his own interests, but also to the interest of others. Now think about that. We have things we're interested in. We tend to gravitate towards people that will allow us to express our interests because they have common interests. But being self-sacrificial means putting your interests as a low priority and putting someone else's interests as a high priority. And this is what is involved with reaching out, putting someone else's interests at a high priority. That means in conversation, you put their interests as the focus of the conversation. Has anyone been left out in our group at church? Think about that. Has anyone been left out? Have new people come and gone? It is your job as a congregation, our job, to be on the lookout for these people. On the lookout. Have your radar up. And get them plugged in. But I don't know how to carry on a conversation with someone I don't know, you might say. I don't know how to do it. I'm an introvert, or I just don't know. It scares me. We have nothing in common, I'm sure. Well, if you don't know them well, you don't know that you don't have anything in common. And if you don't know them well, how will you ever get to know them? Remember Philippians 2:4. Look to their interests. Their interests. Interview them. My mom is so good at this. She's one of those people that she never met a stranger. And that's because she gets to know people. She genuinely likes people. She likes to know about their lives. What's going on? What do you do? Where do you live? How many kids do you have? When she talks to married women and so forth. She'll talk to anybody, though. People, we love to talk about ourselves, right? We enjoy that. Okay? And if you really care about someone else and you really care about their interests, you make the conversation about them, about their interests, and you ask follow-up questions. It's not just like, oh, where do you work? Oh, that's great. Okay, well, I got to move on now. Let them know you love them. Invest. Now look, this has to primarily be by gender. Gender, the same gender to the same gender. Men reaching out to men, women reaching out to women. Each gender has to carry its own weight. You should be taking an inventory of those of your sex in the church and thinking about who is plugged in and who isn't. So the reason I say it's by gender is because the glue that bonds someone to a church is the same sex in the long run. In fact, I'll tell you my experience at First Baptist La Crescenta. So I'm like, I don't know, 19 and a half years old. And I went to this new church. It was a pretty good size college group for the size of the church. It's a medium-sized church. I just come from Lake Avenue, which was a huge church where I felt a little bit lost, even though I was involved in music ministry there. I came to the college group the first day. There were probably about 20 people there. And I'm just going to be frank with you guys. You know, number one on my list for choosing my next church was where are the hot girls, right? Okay, I'm going to go to a college group where there's hot women. And there were not that many girls there that day. And the ones that were there, I just didn't find them that attractive. And I'm like, man, you know what? I don't think so. This church, it's probably not for me. I'll stay the whole time. But, I'm going to be heading off to a different church where the odds are a little better for me. After that meeting was done, immediately the guys came up and talked to me. Immediately, they asked me all sorts of questions about myself. They made me feel like I was the coolest person ever. They even invited me out to play tennis with them and set up the date right there. They were so cool. I thought to myself, there's no hot chicks at this church, but the men are awesome. The guys are awesome. I'm staying at this church. And you know what? I came back the next week, and the hot chicks were there. Now, of course, everyone has their own opinion of what's hot and what's not, right? But if we're honest, this does go through our heads when we're at that immature college age. The guys carried their weight there. They made me feel valued, loved. I got plugged in. It was a great group there. Great group. I had good years there before I got boxed in the head. Yeah.
I just walked in when you said there are no hot chicks.
That was not referring to our church.
What are you talking about?
So it was my experience as an immature college kid looking for a new youth group. Yeah.
Were you talking about?
No, I was not. Yeah, and we're going to just delete that from the recording as well. So also think about this. At a church service, if a guy talks too long to some new girl at church, she may feel uncomfortable. She may feel like she's getting hit on, right? And so it really needs to be where each sex takes responsibility for those of their sex that are new, have come back, aren't plugged in, whatever the case may be. Be intentional. The flesh is strong. We are naturally lazy and self-centered. We are. We have to remind ourselves that we need to be active with this. This is how our church will grow. Have you guys figured out how I'm relaying this to the Hoplite phalanx yet? No? Okay, that's an honest answer. I'm going to bring it back to it. Get to know new people or those outside your social circles. After church, be intentional. Church service ends, first 10 minutes. Go find someone that you don't really know about. Think about who's not plugged in. Or how about somebody that is starting to get plugged in? You want to plug them in a little bit more. Maybe you just don't know them. You'd like to know who this person is. Right? It can be at a Friday night meeting. It can be whatever the occasion is. We need to be intentional. Invite such people out to lunch after church. Because see, everyone in here says, we love new people. We love people coming back after a while. We love everybody. But do they know that? If we really do, we act on it. During the week, text someone you don't know that well. Take them out to coffee. Get to know them. But I don't have their phone number. Oh, well, maybe you should talk to them after church and get it. Are you a couple? Invite another couple over for dinner. Come to Bible study. You'll expand your network of friends at Bible study. You can make it to Bible study. We ask you to come. For those who don't have other responsibilities. Be intentional without being artificial. Don't do this if you don't really care. Okay? People can smell artificiality. I'm giving you practical steps, but it has to come from the heart, folks. Right? Ask yourself, do I want to become more Christ-like? Do I want to love other people as Christ did? Desire that love, and you will naturally and genuinely reach out to other people in your church group. But you don't have to be best friends with everybody, okay? People naturally gravitate towards others that have common interests. That's fine. But it is all of our responsibility at this church to make sure people are not being overlooked. Your goal when coming to church should not be merely, what can I get out of this? It should be, what can I do for others? Who can I love self-sacrificially today? Who is being overlooked? Stop being self-centered and get your other-centered radar up. Look around, see who needs friendship and love. You know, a hoplite phalanx will not succeed unless each soldier is covering another soldier, looking out for the health of the other soldier. In our case, it's the spiritual health. It won't work. In fact, in the 300, after that clip, they all go into fighting one-on-one, and the Spartans would never have done that. Okay, it's Hollywood, it's a cartoon, right? Or it's an animated, what do you call it? A comic book rendition, feature film based on a comic book. They would never break the phalanx. They would never break that formation. They're dead when they break it. We are too. We are dead as a church when we break the formation. We'll talk quickly about this part, infighting, the second point, infighting, resentment, and holding grudges. You have three choices when an offense occurs, when you're offended, somebody insults you or whatnot. Okay? One, you can overlook it. Let's talk about overlooking it. So, Proverbs 12:16 gives us a piece of wisdom. Fools show their annoyance at once, but the prudent overlook an insult. Somebody uses some words with you that are a little bit harsh. Is it really worth taking it too seriously, taking it personally? Can you just overlook it? Perhaps. Proverbs 19:11 says, a person's wisdom yields patience. It is to one's glory to overlook an offense. It requires wisdom to do that. And it requires wisdom to sometimes not overlook an offense. You don't always need to. Sometimes they require the second option, which is confronting him or her. Now, you confront the person with the aim of restoring harmony. That's the aim. Not be like, yeah, you are a bad person and I'm much better than you. No, it's to restore harmony between you. Matthew 18 lists the steps that you need to take. Many of you are familiar with it for proper confrontation. Okay? If your brother sins, go and show him his fault or her fault in private, and then so forth. You take steps after that. You do so in a humble way. If you don't do that, either one of those, you're left with option 3, which is all too easy to fall into. You just do nothing about it, and you are resentful. It builds up, and it turns into a grudge. And then you start to hate that person. That person is poison in church. That person is what's wrong in church. But you never even confronted them on their sin. So now you become the sinner because you're not following the biblical model. And you're letting that hate well up. And you know what the devil does? He comes and he puts his claw around your brain. And suddenly he's got a stronghold on you. It's important how we speak to each other. Let's see if we can. Oops. You know, it's actually important to watch our words that we use with each other so that we don't offend others. Proverbs 15:4 says, a gentle tongue is a tree of life, but perverseness in it breaks the spirit. A gentle tongue. Being gracious with your words is so important. Ephesians 4:29 says, let no corrupting talk come out of your mouths, but only such as is good for building up, as fits the occasion, so that it may give grace to those who hear. Build them up with your words. When we often are just thinking about your own needs. What are my needs when I say this? I don't like that, so I'm going to let them know that they don't like it, even if it was kind of an important thing close to their heart. We don't care how they're going to feel with what we say in our negative words. Proverbs 12:18. There's so much good in Proverbs. Oh, it's an amazing book. I love this verse, the imagery. There is one whose rash words are like sword thrusts, but the tongue of the wise can bring healing. So we should practice gentleness of speech. Let me give you some examples of ways we could practice gentleness of speech. Because, so often we hear these great principles in a sermon, right? Biblical principles, and they don't translate into specific, concrete items in our own life. Let me give you some examples that I just thought of. I just thought of common sort of phrases that are often thrown around. And maybe we could replace the harsher phrases with something more gentle. Why in the world would you do that? Maybe we could replace that sort of talk with, may I show you another way I've learned works really well? We could replace, of course. And there's times to say, of course, like someone says, oh, thank you so much for, attending my party. I'm glad you were able to make. Of course I would come. That's a good thing, right? But when you say of course, like in a way like, of course, you uninformed person, you didn't, of course, why would you ask such a stupid question? Replace that with, yeah, it actually does. I looked into this. Replace, I can't believe you've never heard of that. Where have you been? Replace that with nothing. Just don't have to say that. Replace, you screwed up, or are you stupid? With something like, are you sure doing or saying that was the best method? Now look, someone might retort, bro, we're Armenians. We are frank with each other. We can handle it. Don't bring this white, wussy, soft stuff into our church. So then why do people still get offended who are Armenian with other people's words? To be frank, I shouldn't use that word. To be honest, I really enjoy the frankness of Armenians. That's one reason I'm at this church, because you will speak your mind. I like that. But the Bible must have something to say. It must have some value in speaking to all people and all cultures to be gentle in speech. It has verses that talk about this. And I think we should have it on our minds at least. You know who you're talking to. You know how they'll take something. You can, rough up with your best buddy from 7th grade, talking a certain way. But keep it in mind. Keep in mind how the other person feels by your words. Because there are people in this church who I've heard other people complain. They tick me off with how they said something to me. It happens in every church. Okay, so what can we learn from Philippians 2, 1 through 4? It says, do nothing from selfish ambition or conceit, but in humility count others as more significant than yourselves. If we lived this, if we really believed this and lived this every day, there would be like zero problems in churches or among the congregation. And you know what's interesting? Look at this. Remember the verse that I brought up before? Let each of you look not only to his own interest, but also to the interest of others. They're right after each other. They go hand in hand. We would have so much less fighting and people feeling insulted if we obeyed verse 3, and we'd have so many more people plugged into church and feeling like they were loved and in part of a cohesive body if we obeyed verse 4. And you know what? When we put in verses 1 and 2, they're all part of a passage about love. So if there's any encouragement in Christ, any comfort from love, any participation in the Spirit, we want spiritual gifts. The Spirit and love go hand in hand. Complete my joy by being of the same mind, having the same love, being in full accord and of one mind, unity, like a hoplite phalanx. We're at war with the world. Devil's waiting to grab any one of us who's not covered by someone else's shield in this church. Pull them away. We have to have that mindset. Jesus prayed for unity, one of the last things he did before his death. Let me ask you this too. If someone new comes to our church, will they want to be a part of it? Imagine if you were a sort of young, full of testosterone Greek guy looking for an army to join a unit. Wouldn't you want one that acted as a unit that was successful in its battle, where everybody had each other? I can't say back, it's really front. Everyone had each other's front and side. That's the kind you want to come to. And then there's our Savior and his example. Jesus said, greater love has no one than this, that someone lay down his life for his friends. For Jesus to love you, he had to have his nails, or his hands pierced with nails, his hands and his feet. His love was self-sacrificial. It involved dying a gruesomely painful death on the cross for you. Why? Why for you and for me? Because we stink. We are sinners. We have pride. We have lust. We bicker. We worry more about our rankings in life than about knowing God. We hurt people. We are not that lovable. God died for us while we were his enemies. I shouldn't say God died for us. That's very Catholic sounding. The Son of God died for us while we were his enemies and endured great pain. Are you then not willing to experience a little pain to show love to your brother or sister or the church as a body? Don't we owe it to Christ? That's my sermon. Let's have a word of prayer. Lord, I pray that you would work in our hearts and grow us closer to you and make us more like your Son. Help us to always put you first and to always keep clear in our minds what our purpose is here on earth. Let us love our brothers and sisters. In Jesus' name, amen.